So Russia has become extra aggressive in recent days, and it's not just yesterday, but there's a pattern here that seems to be forming. And you'll see this as we go through the daily brief today. So 1,260 Russians off the battlefield, and that's pretty high. That's around the average of the highest month, which was last month. 4 tanks, 19 armored fighting vehicles, 11 artillery systems, 38 vehicles and fuel tanks. So the numbers of casualties seems to be about at the same kind of high that it's been recently. But there's some interesting things that I want to point out here. So we talk about how many Russians are off the battlefield, 670,190 and 1,260. They just can't sustain this. Well, maybe they can. I was talking with Greg Terry yesterday, and we were looking at the frontline update, and he said something really interesting. So you're just going to hear him talk for just a moment. Explain that.
They have an ongoing mobilization. I know that we heard about 2 weeks ago where Vladimir Putin said that he would be calling up or initiating a mobilization program for the remaining 3 months where they wanted to mobilize, I think it was 188,000 soldiers, somewhere around that number. That's not the mobilization that I'm referring to here. Russia, no matter what you see, what you hear, they are constantly mobilizing and pushing about 30,000 new, completely untrained, of course. I know people like to refer to them as, cannon fodder or meat troops, meat grinder, all of those phrases. But the reality is it's people,
right?
And they are inserting.
That's just backfill. So they would have lost about 38,000 last month.
Correct.
So they're losing something, but they're backfilling, so they're not losing like you would think they're losing in strength.
That is
losing soldiers. Right.
Well, that's
okay. So that's what I wanted to show you here, and that is that even if they're losing this many a month, they're really over the course of the month they would have lost only 8,000 compared to what they have now mobilized in order to backfill that. So you got to understand how these numbers work. Okay, this is Andrew Perpetua and the losses that he could identify. Again, it looks like about 1-to-1, something along those lines. Not great, but that's where we are. Now, this is terrifying to me. It shouldn't, at first blush, look like it's terrifying. A night without Shahs. First time in the last 48 days in Ukraine. Now, Russia can make about 16 Shahs or build and deploy about 16 Shahs per day. So anything less than the 16, if there's only like 6 that go out or 10 that go out, I'm thinking maybe they're saving up for something. And that's my first reaction. I could be totally wrong, but that they're not using or not deploying or sending out some overnight makes me nervous that they're saving up for a big spectacular hit. Factory on fire in Republic of Sakha. Okay, I don't know what's going on with the fire. It could just be a fire, but it could be a hit. Now, this is actually a hit. Ukrainian intelligence claims that they destroyed a Russian Tu-134 military aircraft at the Orenburg 2 airfield on the night of 12 to 13 October. These planes are used for transporting high-ranking officials from the Russian Ministry of Defense. And if we look at where the map is, that's a good ways from Ukraine. That was an intentional hit by Ukraine. Okay. This was really interesting to me. Russia attacked the Odesa airport, leaving 10 victims, damaging vessels, warehouses, and other facilities. Some people in the city are so used to these attacks that they hardly even react, like the man in the video. So look at her reacting over here. Like she's like, you can see the shaking, right? And then she's like, oh, what's going on? But watch him. He's just going to, okay, something hit. She's covering her chest. And then you can see a little shaking here. Yep. And he's like, well, something's getting hit. I got to get my coffee. They're somewhat desensitized to this. Now, yesterday there was some news of Russians killing Ukrainian POWs. I talked about it in my daily brief. I renamed the daily brief so that it wouldn't get flagged by YouTube for being something that they can't show, and consequently not a lot of people watched the daily brief yesterday. I try to temper it a little bit, but Um, there's an image of the aftermath of the execution suggests that Russian forces disarmed, lined, stripped, and shot the Ukrainian POWs, a clear indication of the premeditated nature of the executions. The ISW has recently observed an increase in Russian forces executing Ukrainian POWs throughout the theater, and the Russian commanders are largely writ large condoning, encouraging, or directly ordering the execution of Ukrainian POWs. So that's what's happening here. And again, I talked about this yesterday, but I guess my title chased people away from thinking that there was anything useful here. But if you haven't seen that, you want to go back and see that to catch up on what you missed. Okay, so the Russians are being pretty aggressive now. Tactical gains in the Donetsk-Zaporizhia Oblast border area are not the result of a sudden or unexpected Russian breakthrough. Russian forces may be reactivating in less active sectors on the front of southern Ukraine to divert Ukrainian attention away from Russia's priority offensive operations in Donetsk Oblast and to fix Ukrainian forces along the front in the southern Ukraine and prevent Ukraine from redeploying forces to Donetsk Oblast. So they're becoming more aggressive, and they're doing that for a reason. Here, concentrated Russian offensive operations into the next Zaporizhia Oblast border area could theoretically support the ongoing Russian operational effort to eliminate the wider Ukrainian salient in western Donetsk Oblast. So what they're doing is for a purpose. A salient is something that looks like this as opposed to a flat front line, and to eliminate the spearhead going toward wherever they're going. Okay. Biden's withholding of weapons package for 5 months, even while congressionally allocated funds were available, has done exactly what we knew it would do. Russians are now rapidly advancing. Now 30 kilometers from the city of Zaporizhia, Russians will now begin to lay waste this great city. Well, okay, there is something to what Jay and Keefe is talking about here, where Biden has just dragged his feet. Now, he could have also authorized long-range weapons into Russia, and that would have had a significant effect on the Russians and how they would operate. And he hasn't even done that. But withholding weapons packages, not allowing certain things to move forward, has been detrimental to the Ukrainians, certainly. Despite the outnumbered 3-1, here's a little bit of good news. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, Ukrainian forces swiftly retook 2 towns in Kursk Oblast within 7 hours of Russia's advance for 10 kilometers. So, okay, that's some good news. The Ukraine now holds 700 and change, not quite 800 square kilometers within Russia, within Kursk. At their peak, they held about 1,100, not quite 1,100 square kilometers. So they've been rolled back a bit, but they still are holding, and they're outnumbered significantly up there. And Russia, as you can understand, wants them out of their territory. So to the degree that they can hold, they can really be a thorn in the flesh, tying down lots of Russian troops up there. Okay. This is some Russian propagandist video. See this flag here? This woman is first to Kyiv, then immediately to Berlin. The Russian propagandist from Channel 1 sitting on a tank with a Soviet flag. Off to Kyiv and then Berlin, she says. First to Kyiv and then to Berlin. And she's on a tank and they're riding around. And that's what she's saying. This is for Russian consumption, Russian propaganda in a nutshell. And so many Russians believe this sort of thing. Yeah, to Berlin with the Russian, or the Soviet flag, rather. Okay. Roman Donek, head of the 151st Training Center, emphasizes the importance of voluntary training for youth aged 20 to 25. Remember, the cutoff is not like 18 like in the United States. Their philosophical understanding is they're still young and they should be able to have life, start a family, that sort of thing before they're being sent to war. So they're not required until after 25. Before then, they can voluntarily enlist if they want to, but they don't have to. He believes that if a proper training program is implemented, at least 25% of those who complete a month of quality training will want to enlist. So this is a smart system. They're going to need this anyway if the time comes, or they might just need it just because. He has witnessed firsthand how individuals transform from feeling lost and scared to gaining confidence and readiness to fight. Donik adds the simplest way to survive in battle is to eliminate the enemy. So this is a pretty smart program that Ukraine is implementing. And again, it's voluntary training. They don't have to, and they don't have to enlist just because they've gone to voluntary training. They don't have to enlist until such time as they would be called after a particular age. So that's pretty smart. Now, there are reports of bomb threats coming in from across Ukraine. Schools, shopping centers, government buildings, and ministries are allegedly mined, including the Ministry of Culture and Strategic Communications and numerous other various sites. Now, that's really interesting to me. I saw this and I thought, oh man, they're going to evacuate them and then blow stuff up while people are out in the street. That hasn't happened, but that was where my mind went. But they can create all kinds of havoc just with a telephone call. That's all that they need in order to create havoc. Okay, last few things. This is Darth Putin. Perhaps I should name recaptured town square the Jake Sullivan War Crimes Plaza in honor of his contributions. Well, that is what it feels like. Now, in Jake's defense, I'm sure he's saying, "Well, I'm keeping from starting a world war or a nuclear war or whatever." But there's a problem with his caution. His overcaution is creating problems as well. And then finally, two last things. Heartwarming reunion. Family meets a father, defender of Ukraine. So he's home. He's got some kind of cane or crutch or something sitting next to him. So he's home. He's sitting on the bench. He's going to get to see his wife and kids. And that's just touching to see. But not everybody gets to come home. And so this is in the Alley of Heroes in Odesa. There's indescribable pain here as people are seeing pictures of their fallen loved ones. And that's just a reality in Ukraine. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.